What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Curated Conversations podcast. Today we have Jeff Hoffman from New York. We are completely unprepared for this conversation purposefully. We have not met before. We have each other's LinkedIn profiles or teams have worked together. And now we're going to dive in and see what's up. What's up, Jeff? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, sir. I had a blast meeting with your crew at several events that we've been at together. I think they have some video of me dancing at one of them and some other things that went on. And just we have a great time with your crew. So when they said they wanted to get me on with you, no doubt we would do it.
I really appreciate that. We have a GIF or GIF, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, of you dancing. And it's phenomenal.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. Love it. So we're not going to do all the background thing. We're not going to do all the bullshit in the back. We're going to start off with questions. My first question to you, Jim, why do the Mets suck so bad?
So there's a lot of reasons for that. It all really goes back to, you may remember the Wilpons made the deal with Bobby Bonilla as far as they didn't want to pay him out his contract, and they spread it out over the years. Do you remember why they made that deal?
Tax evasion?
They wanted to keep the money with Madoff. I'm serious. Go Google it. No, it's unbelievable. And look, I mean, you won, you got a few World Series rings. It's tough in any city where you've got two teams and one historically sucks up all the oxygen. It's really tough.
I get that, but as a Long Island guy, I grew up going to Shea Stadium, going to Mets, and the entire island essentially were Mets fans, except for those like my dad who moved out from Brooklyn and was still mad at the Dodgers.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the cabal. It's the Manhattan Bronx cabal, right? And they just don't want any other teams to be successful. I don't know. Ultimately, I mean, look, if you really want an answer to the question, it's bad decision making, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. In any franchise that has a problem, you've got a franchise in a huge media market that made some really good decisions at some points and some really bad decisions at other points, and that's true at every franchise. And you have ups and downs. I do think the Mets have had a few more sways in that. And obviously, when you're compared to the Yankees, who have 27 world championships, the most of, I guess, any franchise in any sport, it's just going to be tough, right? And I don't apologize, but you see my dad was born in the Bronx, so I don't know what to tell you, right?
No apologies necessary. I completely get it. I'd love to get into... I want to dive in deep early because I am deeply concerned about the Chevron deference ruling, Supreme Court just threw down. My concern is that the prohibitionists find a friendly court and come up with some bullshit about how cannabis will destroy society. The judge now does not have to ask any agencies, not that many agencies at this point would say that cannabis is great, but the judge can basically do whatever they want. They can say, yeah, you're right. Then appeal, go up to the Supreme Court, and all of a sudden we have a prohibition on cannabis in the United States. Does Chevron lead to that, or am I just being a doomsdayer?
No, I don't think that happens. So look, let's remember, all of this is federally illegal right now anyway. And I kind of talk about it with my clients when I'm in a room and like I have two clients that don't know each other. I say, hey, you guys are related. And they're like, how are we related? I say, you're both part of the Hoffman crime family, right? Because literally, no, I mean, it's serious. Everything we're doing as far as these state-run cannabis programs is 100% federally illegal.
Yeah.
When we talk about what's going on with Chevron, there is one other part that we need to bring into it, and that is the major questions doctrine, right? So, like, if the issue was going to have to deal with something that affected millions upon millions of people or hundreds of billions of dollars, or I don't even know what the threshold, I mean, that's for a court to decide. But this major questions doctrine kind of undid a bit of Chevron anyway years ago. And it's the idea that if the issue is going to impact the country in a huge way, this whole Chevron situation didn't apply anyway. It's in situations where the major questions doctrine doesn't apply. And again, for what we have going on right now, what we're doing is illegal anyway. So I just don't see a path for someone to make it more illegal because it's already illegal. We're kind of in this weird space. I'm sorry, let me let you go ahead and kind of maybe take me in a direction that you may want
I,
to address there.
I'm with you. I guess the question, I obviously am not a lawyer. So I wonder
Yeah.
does it have any impact on state programs whatsoever, regardless of federal law?
Well, so what has happened is a lot of states implemented a Chevron-like thing in their system where they gave similar deference to regulatory bodies. I think it's obviously made a lot of news. What it definitely does is not, I mean, obviously there's plenty that happens below a major question, right? So major questions were already out of them. Like when you saw people posting on LinkedIn, well, now unelected bureaucrats can make decisions that are going to affect millions upon millions upon millions of people in the United States. Well, no, because we already had this major questions doctrine. If it was going to really impact millions upon millions upon millions of people, we're over in major questions, and it's not happening that way anyway. The most interesting things that I think we have going on right now, just kind of related to this, and it's a little bit beyond Chevron, but I think it kind of plays into what your question is this whole rescheduling thing.
Yeah.
And I do get that everybody's very excited about what rescheduling does for the financial components, particularly gets rid of 280E, et cetera, et cetera. The part that I'm not sure people are really focusing on, and certainly the non-lawyers are not focusing on, is Schedule 3 makes cannabis a pharmaceutical drug in the United States.
Yes.
In order to create, produce, manufacture, grow, cultivate, sell at retail, pharmaceutical drugs, you have to have a pharmaceutical license. You have to be Pfizer, you have to be Lilly, you have to be Johnson & Johnson, you have to be CVS, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the people that can deal in pharmaceutical drugs. My biggest concern is that if this actually goes through, and I'm beginning to think more and more that it may actually not, we all know what's going on with the presidential election right now. If I had to bet, I would bet the challenger is going to win, and things may change, but that's kind of where we are. And I think if he wins, this all goes away anyway.
I quite
They
agree.
would stop this process. If somehow the process does go through, however, and it becomes a pharmaceutical drug in the United States, if I'm the general counsel of Pfizer, and people have told me I shouldn't say this because maybe it'll give them ideas, but I think they're pretty smart anyway. They kind of get this. They don't need my help.
Yeah.
If I'm the general counsel of Pfizer, as we stand right now, where cannabis is done through these state-run programs, there's nothing federal, and as we've already established, it's all federally illegal. I look at it and I say, I'm not damaged now. There's no way the pharmaceutical companies and the CVSs and Walgreens of the world are damaged now because it's an illegal substance. The moment you make it a pharmaceutical drug, they're now damaged by all these illegal state-run cannabis programs, right? You are now taking money out of Pfizer's pockets and Lilly's pockets and CVS's pockets by enabling the states, enabling other businesses to do something that they're not allowed to do, and that is sell a pharmaceutical drug. So if I'm the general counsel of Pfizer, I immediately sue in every state where there's an illegal state-run cannabis program. And again, this hurts me. I don't want them to. This is why I don't want reschedule. I want unschedule. And unschedule is just deschedule with a different prefix. I like the emphasis of un versus d. But if we do this, I think it gives them the ability to go into state court, into courts, federal court probably, but you could do it in state court too, and say, look, this was all illegal before, so I couldn't sue. But now it is legal, but it's only legal for me to do it. So by enabling these other businesses to do it, you're taking money out of my pocket. I am now damaged. I now have standing to sue you, the state of New York, you, the state of California, to shut down your illegal state-run cannabis programs unless you require everyone in your state-run cannabis programs to go and get pharmaceutical licenses, right? It seems to me that is the de jure future, even if it's not the de facto version. I mean, I've seen some people talk about we're going to get some kind of new Cole memo or this or that or the other thing. And I'm just like, I don't see how that prevents someone who literally absolutely has monetary damages due to these programs. I don't see how that prevents them from going to court, but we'll see.
I understand. So I want to go back real quick, and then I'm going to jump back here. Firstly, I don't think the challenger wins. I don't see it.
Okay, go ahead. So you think we are getting rescheduling?
So I don't know because I haven't looked at it from your takes perspective. I want to play that out. So if it gets rescheduled, well, firstly, why are folks pushing for rescheduling if that's the outcome? Is it unintended? Do they not get it?
That's what I think it is. It's because they are so crushed by 280E. And for folks that don't know, 280E is how the federal government got all the drug crime lords in the 80s.
Mm.
They never got them for actually selling the drugs or transporting the drugs or doing anything.
Al
What
Capone.
they got them on is not paying taxes
Yeah.
on the money they made selling the drugs, right? And so that is 280E. So it's just incredibly difficult in the current climate in the United States to be profitable as a cannabis business because you cannot write off any of your expenses in your business other than cost of goods sold. So a normal business that makes $1 million top line, if they got $100,000 in rent, that comes right off the top, and we're down to $900,000. And then every other expense
Yeah.
keeps taking it down until we get to their actual taxable number. 280E says no. For your illegal cannabis business, you don't get any of that. So you basically pay taxes on everything except what it very specific. If you bought pre-rolls, you can deduct the money that you paid to get those pre-rolls that you then sold at retail. You can't deduct your rent. You can't deduct your salaries. You can't deduct your marketing activities. And so it just makes it very difficult for businesses to be profitable, right? So that is one of the biggest bugaboos for the industry. And so certainly rescheduling, making it a pharmaceutical drug, makes it so that you're no longer an illegal business and you can take all those wonderful tax deductions. It's just a problem that on the flip side, to be that legal business, you now also need the pharmaceutical license. And how much does that cost? I mean, I know here in New York, one of the things New York has tried to do is get licenses in the hands of equity applicants, folks that were convicted of cannabis crimes, folks that don't look like me.
Hold on. I want to
Yep.
time out because
Yep.
social equity is a whole other segment that I want to get into.
Sure.
Let's stay on this for a second. How does that play out politically, right? Let's say the Biden Harris or Harris whatever administration reschedules.
Yeah.
How does that play politically? All of a sudden, I'm going back to buying dime bags for some dude on a couch.
Yeah.
The public.
Well, no, not necessarily. You buy it from CVS because CVS will start selling cannabis.
The timeline between them shutting everybody down and then getting up to speed and actually having product in stores.
Yeah.
There's a massive window there that'll just push everything back into the gray market, right?
I don't disagree with that. That's part of the reason why this is insane.
Like, don't you see that?
Apparently not. Apparently not. I mean,
Something's
I don't know. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, if you're asleep every day at 8 p.m. when everybody else is working, I guess. And look, I'm going to vote for the guy. You and I kind of disagree about what I think is going to happen here. I think that debate was a disaster for me. That's another topic. We can get that elsewhere. I think that and this is why the equity part did matter. Some of the people in the industry will absolutely be able to get pharmaceutical licenses.
You're right.
It's the people that won't be able to that is kind of my prime concern, which I think is a lot of the industry.
All those guys are done.
Exactly. They're doomed. They're doomed. That's the thing. And so I think in the reach for let's solve our financial problems, which is what the publicly traded companies want. It's what the financiers want because then they're going to be able to invest in this, right? It solves the problem for the usual suspects, right? It does not solve the problem for the market writ large. And in fact, possibly creates worse problems.
Well, let's talk about worse problems. Why are social equity programs so broken?
Because that is not what's in the interest of the folks that are on top of the pyramid or even in the middle of the pyramid, right? So there was a great quote I saw somewhere that to someone who's already established, attempting to get equity looks like a retrenchment or a damage to them, right? You feel the people that are in power, when you try to bring people that have traditionally forget not being in power, have not even had a seat at the table, it is a little bit of a zero-sum game, right? So if we say we're going to give half the licenses to this group of people, that limits the number of licenses that the group that traditionally gets the licenses has at their ability to get, right? And so when you've traditionally seen these done in states, and let's not even talk about the potential constitutional issues, right? The Supreme Court's pretty much gotten away with affirmative action. And there's arguments about are there rules, particularly if you do it in a way that violates the Dormant Commerce Clause because you're benefiting people in your state versus other states, et cetera, et cetera. The biggest issue is that when you've done this, the people that are already entrenched don't want it because it limits their opportunity, which they've already had plenty of. And also the process to go through the application, like who has the ability to come up with 50 grand to do an application, right? Not equity folks. And that's why when you look at what New York did, they made this first application really simple. They literally gave out the applications randomly. So like they assigned a random number to everybody that applied. And that's how you came up with it. I mean, think about it. If the application process had been merit-based, the way it is in pretty much every other state, every other time I've ever seen it done, who's going to have the better merit-based applications? People with money to buy attorneys and consultants to get a better merit-based application. So that is why it's been broken historically, is because the entrenched powers don't want it. And then the processes that have been created to make it happen have gone doubly to disenfranchise the people that you're trying to help. And that is the issues that I think you've seen in most other states. And then the big issue here in New York was that the regulations here in New York not only didn't meet our own cannabis law here in the state, in many ways they violate the U.S. Constitution. So it's just, you got to do a better job of creating your regs if you want to be very serious about doing this.
Not only that, but the funding for social equity applicants in New York was all FUBAR.
Yeah, originally it was going to be they were going to do 150 of the card licenses, and they were literally going to build every one of their dispensaries.
Yeah, we were involved.
And guess what? Who doesn't want to give you a bunch of money to build dispensaries in an illegal industry with questionable regulations and laws? Investors, right? I mean, it's like, who's going to invest in this? Which of the established Wall Street players would do it? None of them, because it's illegal. What investors are going to want to get into this? Because and this gets really into the weeds. But so, for example, in New York, we have what's called the two-tier system. It's very similar to alcohol. When people don't understand it, here's the example that I give to them. How many Budweiser bars where the entire bar is branded Budweiser and the only drinks that they sell there are Budweiser drinks? How many bars like that have you ever seen in the United States? Right. The answer is zero, because it's not allowed, right? There's a two-tier system. The producers of the alcohol are not allowed to be in the retail part of the industry. That is what New York decided to do in their industry. And the most particular part is they say if you're in the state itself, you can't be on both sides regardless. The way it works outside of the state is if you have cultivation, say in California, you can't be in retail in New York. It doesn't go the other way for whatever reason. We all thought it did go the other way originally, but it doesn't go the other way. If you have retail other places, you can be in supply in New York, which is kind of weird, but whatever. The regulators are kind of crazy about all of this. But think about it. In most places in this country, the most successful investors and businesses, et cetera, are going to be vertically integrated, right? That's why people like vertically integration, right? You get to see everything that's going on. You get the VIG at every step of the supply chain, right? That's why people like it. If you're vertically integrated, that means you're in supply. That means you can't be in retail here in New York. So that got rid of basically the entire class of potential investors that really know what they're doing, that are doing it in other states, to be able to come here in New York and invest in those businesses, right? So there are positives to that. I guess it's not clear to me really that there are positives to it. The regulator argued there were, but that this has been the outcome, is that basically when you go to investment conferences, people refer to New York as uninvestable. And unfortunately, that is a bit of the case, particularly for the larger players, for the players that really know what they're doing and are well capitalized. Because they're vertically integrated, they can't play in retail here at all in the state.
100%. Your comment about who would fund this, the answer is predatory lenders. And a lot of the clients that we have that have signed with us have said, oh, well, we have funding problems because I can't accept the terms of this loan.
Exactly.
I can't accept the money from the state because they're fleecing us at every step along the way. And so, that's where
who do you want to be fleeced by? Who do you want to be fleeced by? Your private investors or the state? Right. That's the point. That's where we are now. Who do you want to be fleeced by? At least, look, and you're talking about the DASNY deals, the fund deals, right?
Yeah.
My only comment there is at least it's a non-recourse deal, right? So they don't come and take your house. I mean, I hear you, but the point kind of becomes, okay, here we are. You got your cannabis license. At some point, your license is going to expire if you don't open, right? They did extend the year, but that's not going to be forever. So if you want to do this, there's a window within which you have to do it.
Right.
So just the question is, if you want to do it and your only option is the fund, guess what you're doing? I mean, that's kind of where we are, right?
Let's flip a little bit over to the Benzinga Capital Conference.
Yep.
Have you been to those?
So I'm very familiar with them. I told them until they do one in New York City, I won't attend. I know a couple of folks there pretty well. We party a lot. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of facetious about that, but they tend to have them all over the country that's not New York. And just as you get, we are in the throes of it in New York. So
Yeah.
I'm not going a lot of other places a lot these days. But I told them the moment you have one here in the capital of finance on planet Earth, and I don't understand why you haven't had a hardcore one here yet, but the moment you do have one here, I'm there with bells on.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the Benzinga guys. I've been to a bunch of
Yeah.
them. I don't understand the deal making that goes on there.
Okay.
And I wonder how many true investment opportunities there are in this industry. When people are looking for capital in this industry, it's often for things that are so niche that it doesn't make sense as an investor to invest in. And the terms are typically so geared towards the investor that I don't know why anybody would accept it. So there are these capital
Because you have to. Because you have to. Because you want to open, and your license is going to expire if you don't, and you don't have any other options. That is why you would do it. And I'm not saying go do that. I'm just simply saying that's the why. And people
That's the
here in
option.
New York are doing that because they don't have any other options. Yeah.
So why aren't there more companies like Dama Financial out there that are doing these types of high risk investments?
Well, I think first off, because I don't think it's a good investment, right? And this is their thing about 280E, right? Like
Right.
it's like if you're and I mean I've got clients like this, and it's no disrespect to them, but like we gave licenses to card folks, and we then did not support them with the skills training that they're going to need to be successful,
Right.
right? A lot of them had a small profitable business. It may have been a 2-person cleaning service, very different than operating a 30-person regulated cannabis dispensary, right? And if we're not going to train them, if we're not going to help them at every step along the way, they're going to fail, right? I mean, I don't know what the stat is. Everybody has their own stat about
Mhm.
some percentage of new businesses in the United States fail anyway. If you think that that percentage number is lower for cannabis businesses, you're out of your mind, right? So a lot of them are going to fail anyway. And if they don't have the skills to do it and the capital to do it right, they're going to fail. So these investors are looking at it. I mean, how much of the business do they need to deal with the risk premium? 132% of the business, right? And I mean, it's never going to work, right?
Right. In Massachusetts, if I recall correctly, they do, or at least they have an RFP out for helping social equity applicants learn about the business and have some training going into it.
I
I think
mean,
that,
we have that in the law in New York.
but
Forget
not in the regs.
some regulation, huh?
It's in the law, but are they actually doing it?
Sort of, but not really. And
Right.
let me tell you what it says in the law.
Yeah.
It says that you are supposed to spool up incubators to help people. And the first part here is the most important for the purposes of our discussion. To help people apply for the licenses,
Hmm.
and then if they get the licenses, help them with all of the things we've talked about. Here's how to use Excel. I mean, I've got clients that don't know how to use Excel, right? And that's not that they're bad people. It's just how can you possibly run a business and you don't even know how to use Excel, right? So I mean, just training. I mean, from that training to how do you do marketing and advertising? How do you hire and fire? What are HR issues? How do you not discriminate against? I mean, just all this stuff, right?
Right.
So the law says we're supposed to spool up incubators that help, one, folks apply, and two, if you get the license, all this other educational stuff that we do. And the money for that is supposed to come from licensing fees and tax revenue, and we can get to that problem. That's a separate problem in a second.
Mhm.
The legislature absolutely could have fronted the money and then recouped it via the tax. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
argument against why we're not doing it financially is a joke.
Right.
But if the law says you were supposed to do that to help people apply, right? We're now in July of 2024. The first application in New York was September or in very late August of 22. It's almost been 2 years. And if one of the directives in the law was these incubators were supposed to help people apply, and we've now had 2 complete application periods, and the first one was almost 2 years ago, it's very clear to me that they're not following the law.
Yeah.
Right?
So Brittany Melville, who you might have met, and I started Forte.
I know Britt quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. We started Forte for this very reason. There is a lack of education in the new ownership of any of these people that are opening.
There's not a lack. There's a complete absence. Absence.
So that's why we started Forte, and we're seeing a lot of traction with that because people are, if they're smart, they're looking at this saying, "Oh fuck, I don't know any of this. I don't." What's a balance sheet?
Yes.
Right? Like,
what's a balance? What's a P&L? What's a pro forma? If you don't know what those 3 terms are, you really need help.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I want to shift just a little bit.
Sure.
Are you mad at Mark Androsine for killing Gopher?
I mean, I'm mad at him for a lot of things, right? I'm mad at him, and I used Gopher. I mean, like
I saw your LinkedIn profile. That's where I got it from.
Yeah. So back in the day, that was kind of my way. RT and Veronica and Gopher and the whole thing. So that, I'm not mad at him about. I'm mad at him about a lot of other things.
Okay.
But that I'm not mad at him about. And I can't be mad. I mean, I loved Gopher. I loved those old text-based tools. I'm an old VI guy and all that. Tech crap. Nobody knows what I'm saying when I say that.
VI only. No Vim.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a matter of only. It's not a matter of only. It's just, you kind of had the thing you had, and it's like, well, you got used to what you're using, and the menu's a little different, or it works this way. And it's just like, okay, that's what I'm using. But yeah, I mean, I get you were kind of tongue in cheek with that. I got plenty to be upset with him about. That's fair. We wouldn't be where we are without the GUI, right? We wouldn't be where we are without the GUI.
That's entirely true. But what's really interesting is that IRC is still here. It's just different. It's Slack.
I mean, people still like text. So like, we haven't killed email. Slack was supposed to kill email. I haven't seen that happen, right? So
Teams might, legitimately, Teams might for organizations on 365. The way that we're using it and integrating with all of our systems, people are leaving Teams less. And that is the goal. Remember when, I don't know if you remember this, Richard Stallman back in the day was all about making Emacs into an operating system for a minute. Teams could do that.
Maybe 30 seconds, maybe, but yeah, okay. I mean, I think you're right. I would prefer some kind of open standard that does this, right? Because then you're siloed in the Microsoft team. We're going to say the same thing now. So here's a big thing from the legal profession that I hate. In the legal profession, lawyers send around Word docs. Like, we draft documents and people send around Word docs with like a number at the end that reflects what version it is.
And then
this person modifies it, that person modifies it, they email to other people, and now we've got 20 versions of Word docs flying all around. I've been trying to get my lawyer brethren, I've been trying to drag them kicking and screaming to Google Docs. And I get there's probably a way in Office to do the same kind of collaborative editing and all that, but you got to really be more of a Microsoft person to do that, where it seems the Google one at least lets you do that. And I'm not as familiar with how Microsoft does all these kinds of things, and we could probably do it in Microsoft as well. It's just I'm trying to drag them kicking and screaming towards doing this kind of more accessible way of doing it, right? And I would like, however we as a society want to do these things, I'm just big into open standards and not having it siloed into one company. That's all.
So Microsoft can do that. And I guess the question is, why don't the two of us start a GitHub-based legal document system?
Could be. I mean, I got a lot of other stuff to do, but hey, let's set up another meeting. And I mean, as you've read from my thing, and folks don't know some, I mean, folks maybe gathered this from my kind of, ability to talk tech a little bit. I mean, originally I was a tech guy. I started a web development company in 1995, right? So I mean, this is all stuff I love and think we ought to be thinking more about. Yeah.
So why are you focusing on law, not your entrepreneurial interests. It's very clear that you have an
Well,
entrepreneurial background.
yeah. So what I'm doing in law now is incredibly on. I'm the most entrepreneurial lawyer you've ever met.
Same here.
I'm incredibly non-risk averse. Okay, and lawyers are notoriously risk averse. Probably the most risk averse profession up there with doctors that there is. Lawyers look at me like I'm out of my mind. So let me give a really good example for you. One of the things that I'm probably best known for here in the cannabis spaces are my Ask Me Anythings. Every Wednesday at
Yeah.
4:20 p.m. New York City time, I do Ask Me Anything about cannabis legalization in New York. I kind of got the idea from Reddit. You know, Reddit was always
Yep.
doing Ask Me Anythings, and they would get celebrities or experts to come on and do Ask Me Anythings, and basically anybody could do it, but it became a thing because of Reddit. And for those of you that don't know, LinkedIn is pretty much the only platform that it's almost anything goes with cannabis. You post to Instagram or a lot of the other ones, they'll take down your post. Eventually, they'll ban you. Unless you're like out there trying to sell your cannabis, you can pretty much do what you want on LinkedIn. And so I was here on LinkedIn. I said, okay, this seems to be the platform that you can do what you want about cannabis. There's nobody out there really on, and this is when LinkedIn was late to the game about allowing video. So like you can now connect StreamYard like we're using now to LinkedIn and do these lives. But LinkedIn was probably the latest big software entity that kind of brought this video and people streaming video kind of to their platform. And so I got invited pretty early by LinkedIn to do this. And I said, we can now do this on LinkedIn. It's the place we can do anything about cannabis. Nobody seems to be answering questions about cannabis on LinkedIn. There is a niche that I think I can fill. I started talking to some of my other attorney friends. Like, attorneys don't want to answer questions about anything. Like, what's your name? It's like, can I send you an engagement ring,
Well,
right? I mean, you're
yeah.
right, but I mean, just come on. Generally, for the
Well, no,
profession,
they
you're
start
very
with,
risk
well,
averse.
let me tell you four reasons why, you know, saying a name is
You
not a
shouldn't
great
do
idea.
this,
Yeah.
or what? Yes, well,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So they said, wait a minute, Jeffrey, you're going to go live without a net on the interweb where all the crazies are, invite them in to ask
Yep.
any question they want
Yep.
about this legal stuff, and on the fly, without like being able to look it up, or not, you're just going to randomly answer questions. Dude, you are out of your mind. This
I
is what they
love it.
told me.
Yes.
But but to your point, this is entrepreneurial. This is not
Yes.
what lawyers do. It changed the game,
Yes.
right? Several other people are now doing it. Another attorney, Paula Collins, she does kind of a. It's not really an Ask Me Anything, but she does a show with Nikki Lawley. There's some other John Puro, I think, does it. I don't know if any of them are answering questions, and some of them started doing it before me. But again, that is very entrepreneurial, and being willing to do it live without a net is just my background brought me to doing that. And I'm willing to take risks that other people won't. So that really is kind of what it did it for me. I will say the other thing, and entrepreneurism drives me, but it's the number two thing that drives me. The number one thing that drives me is when I see something that I don't like or I don't think is right. Man, and you're on the other side of that issue from me. Man, you got a problem, right? And so, like, the other example I give is like, I never thought anyone should ever be convicted, put in jail, arrested. Forget about it for cannabis. My line is cannabis has been part of humanity, except for the years that I have been alive. I was born in 1970. No, no, dude, I'm serious. I was
No, I
born in
get it. You're right.
1970.
Yeah.
I was born
Uh-huh.
in 1970. What got passed by Congress in 1970? The Controlled Substances Act. So literally, I mean, I get there was some anti-cannabis stuff before that, and the dirty Mexicans and all these people, and everybody's going to get high and all this terrible stuff and commit all these crimes. Terrible, terrible racist stuff against our neighbors to the south. Terrible racist stuff against um, uh, people that don't look like me in this country. And I just sat there and I'm like, this is insane. What are we doing? And the damage that we did to our society. I mean, I can only
Hmm.
imagine that the damage we did to our society, particularly among black and brown communities, has got to be measured in the trillions over the history for lack of employment opportunities you got lost because had a conviction on your record, housing opportunities. I mean, just you name it. It's got to be measured in the trillions. It's among the dumbest things any society has ever done for itself. So once I had the opportunity to kind of get into a platform where I had the opportunity to change that, and I'll give you one great example of that. MJ Unpacked used to be at the Midtown Hilton here in New York City. The Midtown Hilton, as I mentioned, my dad was born in the Bronx. I think I mentioned that earlier. When we would come back to New York City to visit friends and I didn't live here with him because he was in the military. We lived everywhere else in the country. We would come back to New York City. Where would we stay? We stayed at the Midtown Hilton. So I had been staying at the Midtown Hilton with my family since I was 5 years old. Now I'm at a cannabis conference at the hotel I stayed at as a child. So we're there hanging out. We're at the event, meeting everybody. We all go outside of the hotel, out in front of it, to get high. And out in front is a woman named Brooke. Brooke is holding up a sign saying, "My husband is in jail in New Jersey for a nonviolent cannabis offense. Do any of you care?" Right? And so who's crazy enough to go up to Brooke in front of the Midtown Hilton and see what's going on? This guy. So I go up to Brooke. I say, "Oh, tell me some more." She starts telling me. And I'm not really a criminal attorney until recently. I didn't know anything about anything when I talked to her. And I say to her, "Brooke, I'm going to get your husband out of jail." I had no idea I'm going to do nothing, right? So again, non-risk averse, willing to do stuff that I have no idea how it's going to get done or anything, but let's go. And then guess what? We find some ways to do it. I meet up with an amazing attorney in New Jersey, Kathleen Redpath Perez, and we start talking and iterating, and we find this directive that the AG sent out, and they got to re-sentence people with non-violent drug offenses in New Jersey without a mandatory minimum. And guess what? My guy had a 2 to 7, and if you re-sentence him without a mandatory minimum, time served and he's out.
God bless.
So jackpot, right? So I'm just saying, this is what drives me. And so there is both entrepreneurism in that, and there's also, man, we have really fucked people, and I'm going to fix it, right? Those two things just really drive me.
Yeah. I love that so much. Going back, I want to do these podcasts that I do live. Scheduling gets in the way, and most people have cold feet. So I really applaud you for getting up there and doing it every week. Secondly, when I go to India every year to visit our team out there. And they have a very strict law against cannabis, except for in religious activities. So people can grow cannabis. They can put it in a mixture they call bung, which is like a milky cannabis sort of thing. And you can just do it. So even in some of the most restrictive places in the world, there are exceptions for cannabis. It's all out there and has been forever.
And it's because it's been with us for all time.
Absolutely.
Time.
Yep. Yep. You practice criminal law now.
Yeah. Well, I practice all law. It's not my focus.
What is your focus?
And it's so my focus is New York cannabis, right?
That's very broad.
It is. But it's not just criminal. It's not just business. If it touches cannabis in the state of New York, we do it. My firm does it, right? And so on the criminal side, nobody's getting arrested for a dime bag anymore, right? And I probably wouldn't do that if they were. That would not there's plenty of folks dealing with that. The things I tend to deal with, it's like this thing with Humberto Ramirez, the gentleman in New Jersey, right? That is, and I'll give you another great example that we're just about to resolve, and it's an unbelievable example. So I have a guy that was convicted of dealing several substances, but he was eventually convicted of dealing cannabis in Saratoga County. It's a county north of Albany, here in New York. Fairly conservative county. It's where the horse races are. It's Saratoga Springs and the horse racing there. So that's kind of that to give folks an idea where it is.
There's a beer.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I couldn't come up with the name, but yeah, I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
But so in the right after the turn of the century, and I love how we can kind of say that exactly when we were alive, and right at the turn of the century, he was convicted and he went to jail for a little while, and then he got out of jail, and he turned his life around, and he went to school, and he graduated cum laude, and he got a master's degree, and he became a school psychologist, and he is changing people's lives. And then the legislature passed a law. And they said, we're going to expunge all the lower level cannabis offenses. But for these higher ones, like you, sir, where you were dealing, you do have to file a thing called a 440 motion. It's an expungement motion. You do have to file this in the court where you were convicted, okay? And there's some things about how it works, but generally the legislature and the governor were very clear. The purpose of this is to free people up from having this conviction on their record so they can just go and live their lives. If there's a poster child for this on planet Earth, it's my guy in this case. So we file our 440 motion in Saratoga Court here in New York, and the court is kind of by county, and it's we call it in New York, we call it Supreme Court. In New York, the Supreme Court is the lowest level court. We do this to confuse everybody. Our top court is the Court of Appeals, but lower level court, Supreme Court. That's where we file this. And the first thing that happens when we file it is that the judge that would hear this motion has to recuse himself. Why does the judge have to recuse himself? Because he was the DA that put my guy away at the turn of the century. All right? You see where we're going here. It's unbelievable, right? So what you do then is he recuses and has to go to some judge in some other nearby county. So we go to Warren County, where even more conservative. And I do have tremendous respect for the judge there, and he is now working with us, and we're going to get a very good resolution here, I think. But initially, he's standard, fairly conservative judge in a conservative county. Is like, I'm not a fan of any of this, right? We shouldn't have legalized cannabis, and no, I'm going to deny your expungement, right? And so now we then appealed that to the third department. That is where we call the appeals level. But then a new DA came in, a new assistant DA came in on the case, and we've been negotiating with them. And I think, like I said, I think we're going to come to a conclusion that I'm going to be happy about, that we're all going to be happy about. And I think it's going to be a win for the state generally. But these kinds of things are where I get involved as a criminal attorney, right? Where it's not that I don't care about the lower level things, but at least here in New York, there just aren't lower level, like people aren't getting arrested for smoking cannabis on the streets. It just doesn't happen, right? But these bigger issues, like how do we deal with the fallout from the past? How do we deal with the expungements? When the expungements aren't being done right, who's the champion that's going to go and deal with this stuff? And that is a criminal matter. It's an appeals matter. And people do typically kind of differentiate that in that. You're either a criminal attorney at the trial court level or you're a criminal attorney at the appeals level. People can do both, but you really tend to specialize. I shouldn't say specialize because the bar doesn't like to use that word. Focus on one or the other. And just the place where I can have the impact is at this kind of appeal level or dealing with these issues that really have a broader impact across the state.
So the judge can say, I don't like this, I'm denying it, as opposed to saying this is the law and I kind of have to go by it.
So that's why we are going to have a re-argue about this, is because there have been a couple of other opinions that have come out since. And I mean, the answer is no, he can't. And the judge is a smart guy, and he doesn't want to get overturned. Right. And the DA doesn't want to have to go to the third department and make an argument where the judges are going to look at him and like, are you sure you went to law school? Right? I mean, it's just right. Like, have you not read Grabard? Have you not read, and I forget what the other, I mean, it's just, you know what I'm saying? And so that's why we've kind of now come to this point where we are going to, like I said, I think over the next couple of weeks here, we're going to come to a much better place. And I can only commend, I mean, we still got to get there. So it's like my commending is in escrow, right? And I'll release it from escrow once my guy gets his thing. But like the DA has been, or the ADA has been great. We had a conference with the judge, and the judge was great. The judge was like, I get it. I mean, I'm not in favor of this, but I get it. You're right. This is what the law is. And like, let's re-argue and we're going to do the right thing here. And so, but if you didn't have a crazy, non-risk averse attorney out there throwing the spaghetti at the wall, this doesn't happen, right? This doesn't happen. And that's why we need to be doing it. Go ahead.
Yes. So let's go back to our earlier part of the conversation. Let's say the challenger wins the presidential election.
Okay.
Where does your practice go from there? How does that play out?
Well, he was already president, right? Once, right? For 4 years, last I checked, right? What did he do about cannabis when he was president before?
Not a thing.
There you go.
Is it in the Project 2025 book, that 400, 500 page volume?
Yeah.
Is there anything related to cannabis in there? I haven't read it.
So I think there may be. I do think I think there's somewhere they want to execute all drug dealers or something like that.
Right,
I think I read something. I don't know where that is. Look, let's be very real. How many party platforms ever actually get implemented, right?
This is a little bit different.
I'm not so sure about that. He's going to get elected. He's going to get elected. His biggest proponents are people that want abortion made federally illegal everywhere, full stop, period. Correct?
Okay.
He's already said he's not in favor of that. He even said that on the debate the other night.
He'll say,
And I
okay,
get
you're a New York guy. You know he'll say anything. It doesn't matter.
I agree with you, sir. I'm simply saying, though, regardless of whether or not anybody's lying, he could say, I agree with them, and we're going to pass this law federally illegal, making it illegal immediately upon me taking office. It would get him votes, I think, from some really conservative. Maybe not. Maybe they're all going to vote for him anyway. I don't know. I'm just simply saying governing is very different than saying this is what I'm going to do when you elect me to govern. That's all. That's my point. And if you want to proffer some very specific things, I'm happy to discuss them with you. I just think, number one, we've already had 4 years of him, and he didn't allow anything to happen, right? Is it possible that they will? Sure. I think what you will see happen then is the states that already have this are going to fight vehemently. I mean, remember, this is all already illegal. I mean, I get we have this Cole memo and this other garbage, but this could all be shut down today. We don't need him to win for it to be shut down. I'm just saying, and that's why I'm not exactly sure what it is, because I don't care, right?
I get it.
If you want to go and try and shut down, I mean, what is cannabis? What is the cannabis industry worth in the United States in total right now? Some
hundreds of billions,
9,
maybe?
10, 11, 12 digit number, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to go to all the states and tell them we're going to take away all this tax revenue and we're going to stop everything that you've got going on in your state. How many other things do we have that are going on where states are not doing what is technically the law, right?
Right. The guardrails are off. There's no reason why he wouldn't say, hey, all blue states, you're fucked. I don't care about your tax revenue.
I got it. So then I think they're going to keep doing it anyway. This is my point. So what is he going to do? Is he going to send in the National Guard? I mean, this is kind of my question to you. What is going to be – I agree with you. He could come in and do this. But when I gameplay it, I'm like, okay, what is it you're actually going to do? And I don't come up with anything. Like, are you going to send out the Army? Right? Are you going to send out the FBI? Are you going to have some type of national police force that goes and arrests everybody that does this? Right?
There could be. They could change the enforcement to be federal. Right? Couldn't he empower?
Partially, it already is. Some of it already is federal. Right?
And then couldn't they say this is a priority now? Get it done?
I got it. But I'm just simply saying you're then going to go into these. Just think about it for a second.
Yeah.
You're then going to go into these states with millions and millions and millions of people that want, like, how is that actually going to work? You would have to send in the Army and just stop it, right?
There are ways to chill the industry down to nothing without there are ways to chill the industry down to nothing without actually having to send troops in.
Okay, so let's itemize them.
Okay, let's say Congress, Senate, pass a bill that says, okay, states' rights don't apply to cannabis. Can't they do that?
So two things. Number one, no, you cannot. The federal government cannot tell states what their states' rights are. That's a constitution. That violates the Constitution. I mean, I guess we're all about violating the Constitution these days anyway. So if you're going to tell me the Supreme Court's going to violate the Constitution, then I can't help anything that's going to happen, right?
But they just did.
So
that's I guess that's my point.
That's where we are. I'm agreeing with you on this point. Okay, but so let's. What
we're getting into is the practical application of that.
What are you going to do?
Conceive of.
Right, exactly. And back to your point, and this actually plays into how I think we're going to get federal legalization eventually. It's not a way people want us to get there, but how I think it will. What would forget whether or not they could pass that law. Let's say that Congress could pass that law.
Mm-hmm.
What would prevent Congress from passing that law the way things stand right now? And I agree with you. It's also everything can change, but what would prevent Congress from being able to forget the constitutional issue? What other procedural matter would prevent Congress from passing that law right now?
Well, the Senate wouldn't approve it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. So that's how you prevent that. And I'm happy to go back to other examples that you want to give about how they would chill other things. But I do want to take that tangent off to how we get federal legalization.
Okay.
I actually think that if the challenger wins and the R's get 50 plus seats in the Senate, I actually think they're going to get rid of the filibuster.
I would see that 100%.
And then they're able to pass everything that you're talking about. But what issue would they use? And it's one we've already mentioned here, to get rid of the filibuster, because their party in Congress absolutely wants this, right? The House would pass it tomorrow because it's the number one issue of the Speaker. And if you got rid of the filibuster in the Senate, you could pass this tomorrow. The federal illegalization of abortion. And I absolutely believe, to our point before, despite what and I agree with you, I think he will flip on that once he gets in and Congress says, well, we've now got the House and the Senate and this is it, we're going to do this for all time. I do think that would be the issue that they would get rid of the filibuster on. If there's ever another election in the United States and somehow the Democrats come back into power, then you get federal legalization of cannabis, because we would have federal legalization right now, but for the filibuster.
I got to be honest, brother. I appreciate everything you said. I think that you're far more optimistic about there ever being democratic processes if the incumbent or if the challenger.
I'm not being. I don't think there will be. I'm not being optimistic. I'm simply giving you a roadmap of how cannabis could possibly be legalized. The path in this country right now. Well, no, I'm serious.
No, I get
you'll
it.
Never
I get
get
it
unless you get rid of the filibuster.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Or you got to remember, there have been times where parties have had filibuster-proof majorities in the Senate. Bush II had it very briefly in his first term, and Obama had it very. They tried to get the health care, and they couldn't get the 60 votes in their own damn party on the health care, so they had to do it via reconciliation. Their one shot at doing anything with their filibuster-proof majority failed.
Yeah.
So when you get that, you have to take advantage of it. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on your party loyalties, neither party seems to be able to do that. But that's what you have to do. One of those two things has to happen, I think, to get federal legalization. Either somebody's got to get rid of the filibuster, or the Democrats have to get 60 votes in the Senate. That's it.
The filibuster going away is far more likely than 60 seats going down.
But they had it. There was a point where they had it not that long ago.
But the political stakes were far different then.
I agree. I agree. The country was polarized, but not what we are today. 100%.
Yeah, no, we're in a different field.
We're in a different country. 100%.
100%. Yeah. I do think the incumbent takes it no matter who's at the front of the party, because people are too afraid. Too afraid of Project 2025, too afraid of losing more rights. Women are pissed and should be. I don't know.
We'll see. So here's the problem. I would agree with you if it was a national popular vote election. I would agree with you in that situation.
100% fair. Yeah.
The problem is it's not. What happens, well, there's some news articles I've seen recently that New York is now in play. I don't know how much I believe that, but whatever.
I don't buy any
The
of
election is, yeah, no, I got it, but it doesn't matter what. It's Arizona, it's Georgia, it's Michigan, it's Wisconsin, it's Pennsylvania. It does look like it might be New Hampshire a little bit more now. New Hampshire is slipping a little bit, but those are the states that matter. And so whatever happens in those states is what's going to happen. And I hear you on a national level, and I think Biden is absolutely going to win the popular vote, or whoever the Democrat is and does the popular vote.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. What happens in California don't matter.
It's the lawsuits that scare me, and the local election offices that scare me. It's the little things that are chipping away.
But that's why I'm not as certain as you are. And I don't know if you want me to use the word certain, but go ahead.
If I wasn't certain and my head wasn't the way that it is, I would probably pick up and leave now.
Okay.
That's how scared I am of that outcome.
Yeah. Right after the 2020 election, I have some text messages to a lot of my coterie that are very involved in politics, that are big donors raising a lot of money. And I said to them, you've been given a 4-year reprieve. I suggest you use it well. And it does not appear to me that they did.
Mm-hmm.
And shame on all of us for that, right? And so I hope that your certainty is borne out. I am, as you can tell, much less certain than you. For full disclosure, I made a very big bet in 2015 when a certain orange-colored gentleman came down an escalator, and I won that bet. And
Yeah.
I hope I'm not right. I hope I'm not right this time.
Two stories.
But I'm very nervous. Go ahead.
So less of a story than a position. I'm certain, but also making backup plans actively, just to be clear.
Okay.
Okay.
That doesn't sound certain then.
I'm optimistic. I wouldn't say certain. You used the word certain. I'm
Okay.
just going along with
I
it.
got okay. That's
Yeah.
different language. Okay.
Fair
Okay.
enough.
Point
It is
one.
different
Point two.
language. So back in the day, my last company before this conglomerate was a social network platform software company called Social Platform. We were the first white label social network software that existed. And we were contacted by some guys over at Harvard, and they said, hey, for the Hillary versus Obama campaign, we're looking for some software. Okay. So we put together a demo. It was
So
Hillary.
this is like 07, 08, somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, it was 07.
Okay.
And we put together this platform, these sites, a site per state with a social network for managing street team organizations. Because the company before that this company was built on, was a street team management software platform for bands.
Mm-hmm.
Immediate parallels with the political
Mm-hmm.
world.
Super smart. You pivoted. Great pivot.
It worked, and we had an exit and so on. But the pitch that we gave, in my opinion, was one of the better pitches I've ever given. And the feedback that we got from the campaign a few weeks later was, Mark Penn doesn't think social's important. We're not moving
There you
forward.
go. He also didn't think you should go campaign in Wisconsin or Michigan.
Jesus Christ. One
Did you ever
guy.
see the letter? Did you see the letter that Debbie Dingle wrote to the Washington Post right after Trump won about this?
No.
I'll dig it up. I'm going to dig it up and send it to you. Debbie Dingle literally, what I don't remember what the date was in 16. Let's say it was November 7th. On November 8th, she wrote in like, I was begging this campaign. I told them they had a problem on the ground in Michigan. I was begging them to come here and campaign, and they wouldn't do it. So this is to your point exactly.
Well, my friend, we're we're in a bit of a quagmire, and I wonder how it's all going to play out. And again, unless I'm optimistic, I think I would go insane. I don't know how people really feel like this is coming and then go about their day to day in any normal
Well,
way.
you plan for it. I mean, to your point, you shifted from certain to optimistic when we discussed that you are planning, and that's what we do. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm still going to raise a ton of money for this. I mean, the most money I ever raised for a campaign was for the Georgia Senators. Remember
Yeah,
after, right? It's the most
yeah,
money I've ever raised. I think the all-in
Warnock.
amount that I was somehow connected to was a six-figure number, right?
Yeah,
And it really, really mattered. It wasn't just Warnock. It was Warnock. They were
and
both runoffs,
Ossoff,
weren't they? And
Ossoff and
both of
Mark.
them,
Yeah,
both of the, and this is a state that was as red as you could possibly be.
my family lives there.
Yeah,
They were volunteering. They were doing the work.
yeah, and we raised a ton of money and we got it done, right? And so I am absolutely, don't think just because I think the opposite of what you think is going to happen. I'm planning for it big time,
Yeah,
right? And so this is what you do is that's how you don't go insane is you plan, right?
right.
That's it.
All right. Heavy.
Yeah.
Parting thoughts, Jeff. Let me ask you a question. What are the biggest misconceptions that people outside of New York have about the New York cannabis world as it is right now?
That it's unsalvageable.
Hmm. What is a path to make it salvageable? Let's go down the road.
So they've sort of, I don't know if they've started on it yet. The number one, so here in New York, we lost almost a year because the regs did not pass judicial scrutiny.
Right.
People were able to very easily look at the regs, figure out where they could drive a Mack truck through, where the holes were that they could drive a Mack truck through, and then proceeded to do so. And there are still holes like that in our system here in New York. I love the regulators. They are great people. They care about equity more than any other state has ever cared about it in the cannabis industry. Unfortunately, they have not historically done a very good job of having their regulations match either the cannabis law here in New York or passing muster vis-a-vis the Constitution. The first lawsuit here, which shut us down for 4 months, was a dormant commerce clause problem, which I absolutely believe is a problem. And it's still, frankly, an open issue. And I believe that the case is still working its way through the Second Circuit up in the Northern District of New York. The second big lawsuit, the veterans lawsuit, was because they didn't follow the cannabis law. It's said very specifically in the cannabis law, the first retail dispensary application period had to be open to everyone at the same time. That is not what the regulator did. The regulator did their own license and then only opened it. I mean, they said anybody could have applied, but that wasn't really true because not everybody could have gotten a license from their application, right? Only people that had the conviction in the qualifying business possibly could have gotten a license. So I would argue the application was constructively not open to everyone at the same time. That cost you another 4 or 5 months, right? And was a loser, and they had to give everybody that filed that lawsuit a license, right? If you're going to keep doing it that way, people are going to keep suing you and keep getting injunctions and keep winning, right? So that is one of the best ways it becomes salvageable is you listen to your lawyers and you make really good regs that adhere as closely as possible to the cannabis law and the Constitution, right? The other things you can do are the things that we mentioned before, these incubators. Where are they? Where are they, right? So do it. Help the people. I mean, the private sector is now finally trying to do it, but it's supposed to be a public sector effort, right? Let's get that stuff done, right? Do the things you're going to say you're going to do. You said you were going to give 150 people licenses and you were going to build their dispensaries. And then you just didn't do it, right? So, I mean, there's 3 great examples of if you don't do those things and do the opposite, it is salvageable, right?
I get that. So you've said incubation a few times, and it's funny because I've transitioned our parent company to be an incubator. We're ready to incubate. We have resources, funding, whatever. There's nothing to incubate that I would actually say, yeah, this is worth taking the risk on. Right. And so
I agree with you. I agree with you now. I think in 2022, there would have been. The state would have said, we're about to open an application. We're going to give out 150 licenses. In order to apply, not only do you have to have the conviction and the profitable business, but you have to agree to go through a 3-month training program that will be, this is not hard, sir. This is not rocket science, right? If you and I on a 1-hour podcast taping can come up with all these solutions, it's not hard, right? Especially when it's in the law and you have to do it and just choose not to.
Well, ideas are cheap.
I agree with you, but do you agree with me that if they'd have done it back then, it would have been something worth for you to get into? Okay.
100%. I would be very...
There you go. What can I tell you, my friend?
I don't know, dude. You told me a lot already, though, and I really appreciate it.
Rock and roll. I'm going to send you that Debbie Dingle thing in the Washington Post.
I would love to see
just so we can tie off that knot. And hey, I'd love to do this again with you.
Same.
This has been great. Obviously, as you already know, I love doing video with your crew. And it's been a blast.
I love it. Maybe I'll come on your Q&A one week. And do
we could absolutely do that at some point. 100%. Yeah, I would love. If you wanted to do it at some point to talk about the incubator, since you guys have expertise, and you could come on and be the expert, like we do 15 good minutes about, New York, you got this law, you don't seem to be doing it. This is what you ought to be doing. I think that would be an amazing show.
I love that. Let's do that.
All right. So you start thinking about it. I've got a few folks already booked. We could do it maybe in August, but I think you may want to wait until September and everybody's kind of back from Labor Day. After Labor Day is kind of when everybody focuses again. So think about it internally. Have you or your team get back to me and we'll do it up.
Done deal, pal.
I love it.
Really good to meet you, Jeff. Really, really great.
We'll talk soon,
Thanks for
my friend.
joining us. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Hopefully you got something from this fun conversation. Take care.